Coming up now on your spoiler-free wrestling news rundown, is Tony Khan a wrestling genius, or has he lost his mind? We've got injury updates on CM Punk, Powerhouse Hobbs, MJF, lots of people, and Darby Allin got hit by a bus. All that and more coming up now. Given everything that happened with AEW and Tony Khan over the weekend, today's video might be a good one to ask the question, is Tony Khan a wrestling genius, or has he lost his goddamn mind? Because there's evidence of both. So after the angle that took place Wednesday night where the Young Bucks and Jack Perry attacked Tony Khan and gave him a Meltzer driver, or what's now been renamed a TK driver, Tony Khan showed up to the NFL draft with a neck brace on. And in our last video, we had talked about how this was a possibility. This was a sort of guerrilla marketing campaign that Tony Khan did himself, because coverage of the NFL draft, when Tony Khan shows up in a neck brace, everyone asks, what's he doing in a neck brace? It even forced Pat McAfee to acknowledge a wrestling angle that was taking place in AEW. So there's a lot of room to say, hey, this was a great idea, because all of a sudden, all these big football fans who maybe watched wrestling years ago when they were kids, or years ago during the Monday Night War, but hadn't checked it out in a while, they see Tony Khan show up in a neck brace. They're reminded of Bobby the Brain Heenan or something from their childhood that they loved. And they're like, oh my God, I got to check that out. So you can definitely say that this little, I don't know if you want to call it a stunt or something similar, but there is evidence to support the idea that this was really helpful to AEW, and that Tony Khan did a good thing getting all this free publicity from the NFL draft by showing up in a neck brace. However, he was interviewed by the NFL Network while wearing his neck brace, and he was asked about his wrestling company, and he said something very controversial, something that made a lot of headlines. Now, I can't play the interview clip because it was on the NFL Network, but here's what Khan said. He said, AEW, we've been doing this for 5 years. We are the most successful sports startup since the AFL. There has not been a challenger brand that has gained as much market share as AEW in many, many, many years. We are like the Pepsi of pro wrestling, and we're up against a really evil juggernaut. WWE is our competitor. That's who we're facing. AEW is like the Pepsi of pro wrestling. WWE's like the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling, and I'm really proud of what we do here. So there's a lot to unpack with those comments. On a recent episode of Zen and the Art of Watching Wrestling with Jeff and I, we talked about how AEW's attitude is that they are a challenger brand, and they are going to follow the guidelines for what marketing and sales specialists say that you should do when you're a challenger brand or a number 2 brand, and that's shit on the number 1 brand as much as possible to try and bring in disenfranchised fans of the number 1. So Tony Khan's trying to explain this, saying, hey, we're the challenger brand. We're Pepsi to WWE's Coke. But then instead of saying Coke, which everyone expected, he changed it to Harvey Weinstein, with, of course, the joke being you expected him to say Coke. He said something much more headline capturing than that. But then a lot of WWE fans took issue with it because you are, in a sense, blaming the company for actions of Vince McMahon. Now, there is some room for him to do that, however, because WWE is being sued, is one of the defendants in the Janelle Grant lawsuit. But on the other hand, what he said got a lot of headlines and got a lot of free publicity for AEW. Also, what he said, that was a written joke. Like, that's not a joke that he came up with on the spot. That was, he delivered it in a way where I was like, yeah, somebody wrote that. It might have been him, but he got somebody's approval to say it first. So this isn't Tony Khan acting out without getting anyone's approval first. This was, there are marketing people at play here who are telling him this is the right move. This is how you act as a challenger brand. Even a Jacksonville Jaguars draft pick, a wide receiver by the name of Brian Thomas Jr., wished Khan a speedy recovery from his injury. So just more like this was something that was talked about throughout the draft. Free guerrilla style marketing that was going out on the NFL Network. But was it all good press? Certainly the people who didn't like the Harvey Weinstein comment don't think so. It was also revealed by the NFL Network's Rich Eisen that Khan's neck brace that he is wearing will be auctioned off to support the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital via Eisen's Run Rich Run charity. But I want to know in the comment section, what do you guys think? Is Tony Khan a wrestling genius, or has he lost his goddamn mind? And be really rude and insulting to each other when you disagree as well. I would only add this little thing. I don't know if Tony Khan is a wrestling genius, but he had to be very smart, knowledgeable about wrestling, knowledgeable about the entertainment industry, knowledgeable about the TV industry. He had to put everything together in a very short period of time. He had to thread the needle just so in order to get AEW Dynamite on television. That created a lot of jobs for wrestlers. That increased the pay for wrestlers. That increased it provided an alternative to fans. Tony Khan's contributions to wrestling, whether you actually like his wrestling shows or not, his contributions to wrestling are very significant. And following Friday's SmackDown, which was the first day of the draft, this was in Cincinnati, CM Punk addressed the live crowd and gave a bit of an injury update. He said, I want to give a little update. My triceps is not 100% yet, but I am on track, and I promise soon I will be back and competing with all the tough badasses in the back. Now, previously, CM Punk had said he's looking at about 6 to 8 months recovery time from his torn triceps, which was suffered at the Royal Rumble at the end of January. So at best, if we're going with that timeline, at best, he would be looking at late July. At worst, we're looking at late September. Does sound as though he is optimistic it'll be on the earlier end of that spectrum. And Drew McIntyre has re-signed with WWE. So we do know a little bit more about the deal. Brian Alvarez, Dave Meltzer are saying it's a 3-year deal. However, financial terms were not disclosed, but Drew seems pretty happy with it. And there was a report from Fightful that came out over the weekend that both Powerhouse Hobbs and Julia Hart are injured. So Powerhouse Hobbs, of course, in his IWGP World Title match against Jon Moxley on Dynamite last week, he began favoring his knee. It definitely looked like he had hurt his knee. Well, it turns out he hurt his knee. But Fightful Select is reporting that it is actually a significant injury, and Hobbs is not expected back anytime soon. So that's a pretty big blow. It's a blow to the Don Callis family too. They seem to be having trouble. Also, Julia Hart may require surgery. Now, there were reports that she'd suffered a shoulder injury during a match taped on April 10th for Rampage with Layla Hirsch. However, she worked a couple matches after that. She did the mixed tag match with Brody King against Adam Copeland and Willow Nightingale the following week. And then they had her and Nightingale at Dynasty had a very short match. It was only 6 minutes, and Nightingale won clean. So the belief is that she was kind of hurt going into those matches, worked through the injury for those matches, now might need surgery, might not need surgery, but she's not expected back on television in the next bit anyway. Nick Nemeth is the new AAA Mega Champion. He won that title in Monterrey over the weekend. He beat Alberto El Patron for the vacant title. It was left vacant because Vikingo was the previous champion. He got hurt. The reviews of this match are not great, but not for any fault of Nemeth's. And Darby Allin. Good Lord, Darby Allin was hit by a bus on Saturday. He shared the post that's up on your screen now to Instagram. So he was in New York attending a play with artist Raymond Pettibon, got hit by a bus, And then they went to a Broadway play after. So all he wrote is that awkward moment when you're crossing the street in New York with a broken foot and get hit by a bus. So not really clear what happened. I mean, he definitely suffered a broken nose there, but evidently was good enough to attend a Broadway play with his friend. More injury news. Dax Harwood is out with a concussion. He suffered that concussion in the match against the Young Bucks at Dynasty. And this was reported in the Wrestling Observer newsletter on Friday. And Dax kind of confirmed the news there shortly after, saying, I appreciate all the texts and tweets. I'm feeling much better today. See y'all soon. So no timeline for when Dax Harwood is back. Obviously, it's a concussion, so he can be back imminently. He can be back in a very long time. Also regarding inconclusive medical updates, Dominik Mysterio has something wrong with his arm, but we still don't know exactly what. Reports had gone out that he was going to get Tommy John surgery. Now, baseball fans are going to be familiar with Tommy John surgery, as basically every pitcher gets it at some point. It was reported in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that Dominik was going to get this surgery. However, Dominik then denied this, saying, no surgery for this guy. And then it was later updated in the Observer that he definitely has surgery was on the table for him, but there's going to be attempts at physical rehabilitation before going the surgery route. So that's good, because Tommy John surgery in baseball, you're out for like a year. And a new baby Viking will be arriving later this year. Valhalla and Eric, that's Sarah Logan and Raymond Rowe, announced on social media that they are expecting their second child in November. They welcomed the birth of their first child in 2021. I mean, Eric has been out of action for since September after having neck fusion surgery. So he's going to be off TV. Sarah Logan's going to be off TV. So poor Ivar's going to be all by himself there on Raw. So as we noted in a previous video, Cameron Grimes was released from WWE. He was on an episode of Busted Open Radio a few days after his release and had mentioned that a pretty high executive had told him flat out that he would always have a job in WWE. Here is what Grimes said on the show. He said, literally the last time I was at TV, I had a pretty high executive tell me, because, I was worried. Starting this stock market gimmick, it made me see business in a different light. You know what I mean? Following these companies and playing with stocks, I would see things in a different light. So I knew that I haven't worked in over a year and I'm making a decent salary. So I knew that if someone was to look at the books, I'm going to be the first person that's going to be cut. If you're looking at it strictly money-wise, but if you're looking at it like, okay, well, this is a talent that can do something for us, you know what I mean? They're going to keep me. So I was told by a high executive last week on Friday that I would always have a job here. I would never have to worry about losing my job here after expressing my concerns like that to him. And then 5 days later, they called me and told me that I do lose the job. So I don't know. Oh, man. You hear about improvements being made in WWE and they sound great. But whatever happened here seems like a pretty big miscommunication as well. All right, so you may have noticed that QR codes have been popping up all over WWE programming as of late. I mean, I don't want to give anything away. I don't know what this could be related to, but I did go to the website that the QR code takes you to. So up on your screen now, you can see I'll just do screenshots of it, as if for whatever reason, I can't seem to figure out how to do this. And it just asks, are you happy? I'm going to put yes, because I'm pretty happy. So you click yes. Have you ever lost what matters most is the next question that pops up. God, I've been pretty lucky. I'm gonna say no on that. Have you ever been forgotten? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Totally. Do you remember who you are? I think so. I think I've got a good idea of who I am as a person. Will you take my hand? Oh, no, that seems inappropriate. I don't even know who you are. Why did you forget us? I don't even know who I'm talking to. And that's not a yes or no question. How am I supposed to reply yes or no to this? I'm going to say no. Why did you forget? You forgot. Who are you? We will make you remember. Who are you? They walked through. You refused. These aren't options. This is confusing. And then it just goes to this thing, this little picture. So, do with that information what you will, but that's going to do it for this video, everyone. Make sure you click the subscribe button, tap the notifications bell, the like button, add us on ICQ, and whatever else it is I'm supposed to ask you to do here. We'll see you again next video.